I'll go ahead and okay. I think it might be showing the wrong screen here. Oops. Share the right one. There we go. Oops. Is that showing the right? Are you guys seeing the slide deck?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Okay. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Great to be back and sharing some more of ways that we can leverage AI. This time, we're specifically going to focus more from an Agile perspective, how AI can be leveraged as an Agile team. We'll also dive a little bit into what we call AI agents. So just to reintroduce myself, if I haven't had the chance to meet you yet, my name's Ethan Albright. I work with eImagine as a project manager and a PMO manager. I've had over 8 years of experience in the industry, really enjoying that connecting business with the latest and greatest emerging technologies. One of those being obviously AI. I love to kind of promote AI, show the tips and tricks here and there. So I love the opportunity to be able to share with you guys today. Taking a look at the agenda, what we'll cover is kind of the different types of AI that are out there right now. Some you're probably very familiar with, and they kind of get a little bit more advanced as we go along. So general AI we'll cover, then we jump into custom AI chatbots. We'll touch on AI agents and some of the considerations around those agents. And then if we have time, I do have a pretty cool bonus topic I'd love to share with you guys, and then we'll open up for Q&A. So we'll hop right into it here. So general AI is probably what a lot of us are familiar with, kind of the general chatbots. What are those? They're kind of the off the shelf or out of the box conversational AIs that really leverage those large language models to oftentimes regurgitate information to you in kind of a more conversational format. Thinking Copilot, ChatGPT, Gemini, really just kind of the base model conversational aspect. Example use cases of where an agile team could leverage those kind of tools is story point estimation tips, maybe tips on how to brainstorm a retro or the way that you run a retro. And I'm sure a lot of us have experienced the value of summarizing meeting notes and being able to capture from a transcript the items that were discussed in a meeting, decisions made, action items, and so on. Now, the limitations of this kind of use of AI, even though very valuable, there's not really a memory behind it unless you specifically tell that chatbot to remember something moving forward. This is something very common in ChatGPT where it'll actually log to its memory to be able to reference back in future conversations. There's also no team context. There is in Copilot when you flip over to the work tab and start to leverage that Microsoft graph that connects to all your different Microsoft entities. But by default, unless you share that information directly with one of these chatbots, it's just unaware of that. And really, kind of the knowledge altogether, aside from searching the internet or you manually uploading documentation or data, it really doesn't have any kind of built-in special knowledge around whatever kind of question or topic that you're discussing with that chatbot. Still very valuable, just some limitations there to consider. So if we were to put this into kind of an analogy, an AI chatbot is kind of that smart colleague that you brainstorm and bounce ideas off of. Very powerful. I'd say one of the first stops when I'm bouncing an idea off of somebody, it's not a somebody, it's sometimes AI first. So still very valuable. Take that a level deeper and we get into what we can just call custom AI chatbots. And the reason I kind of put quotes behind that is because this term is kind of interchangeable with the word agent. In Copilot, you'll hear Copilot call a customized chatbot an agent, not always what the term agent means when we talk about agentic AI, which we'll cover here in a couple slides. But custom AI chatbots are built on that foundation of a general AI chatbot, but they're tailored assistants with a specific set of custom instructions. Maybe it's the tone or the way that they reply to certain prompts or the way that they output that response. Or maybe you've given it knowledge ahead of time, whether it be a folder of files, a connection to a database, some kind of core knowledge outside of its trained model knowledge. Example use cases of where an agile team could leverage this is a Scrum Master GPT, basically a liaison that helps advise somebody on your org's agile playbook or framework. the custom way that you guys deliver projects. This custom GPT or custom agent could be trained on that. A backlog buddy, maybe it has a direct integration with Jira and it can reference those requirements and align those requirements or prioritize those requirements based on product goals or pain points that an organization is specifically experiencing right now. Or maybe a testing coach. And this is really valuable because it could do anything from generating test cases based on core documentation, requirement documentation you've already given it, or it can assess for coverage of those test cases based on that requirement documentation. In that requirement documentation, rather than uploading it with each prompt that you give it, it can be embedded in the core knowledge of the way that that AI chatbot runs. So it's always able to reference back to what product are we talking about? What are the requirements that we're reviewing? What is the overall functionality that I'm assessing this test case to? Now, even though this is still very, very informational and valuable, there are some limitations. One of them being the fact that it doesn't actually take any action. It's still just regurgitating or relaying information back to you. Great information, but there is a step further that you can take it when you get into agentic AI. So adding to our analogy here, our general AI or our AI chatbot is kind of like that smart colleague that you brainstorm with. A custom AI chatbot would be a very smart and specialized colleague that you brainstorm with. So let's go ahead and dive in here to create an agent. Let's go ahead and create an agent here in Copilot. The first thing I want to show you is kind of out of the box with Copilot. You'll see that there are a lot of pre-built agents. You'd see this also in ChatGPT and the GPT store or My GPTs. And these are just agents that are built with preset instructions based around a certain topic or a certain functionality. So you have a researcher agent, an analyst agent. This is going to be heavy on like data analysis. Prompt coach, it's going to coach you on your prompts and maybe help beef up your prompt to better get what you're looking for. Writing coach is great. Idea coach is a really good one if you're bouncing or brainstorming ideas. But all of these customized chatbots, really think of it as the initial prompt that you would give it to kind of set the stage with a chat conversation. Think of it as that prompt already being given to this agent. So it already knows what kind of role it's playing in this conversation. So rather than diving into one of these out of the box agents, let's go ahead and create our own here. When you click this create agent option, one of the really cool things about AI is that we can create an agent using AI. So while there are ways to get in here and kind of manually configure them, I can leverage a conversation with AI to create this agent along the way. For the sake of time, I do have some prompts saved here, so I'm just going to paste them in, but we'll read them out loud. So the first question is asking me, hi, I'm here to help you build an agent. You start by describing what you want your agent to do. So what I'm going to paste in here, and I can zoom in just a little bit so we can see a little better. This agent should specialize in taking requirements written in various forms or documents and craft them into user stories in Gherkin format. So I'll press enter there. And for some reason, it always likes to jump straight to naming the agent. I think it's a fun part where you can kind of bounce ideas around, but it always wants to jump right into naming the agent. So the agent has been set up to convert requirements from various formats into user stories using Gherkin syntax. Next, let's choose a name for your agent. I suggest the name Gherkin Story Crafter. Would you like to use this name, or do you have another one? Let's call it Story Crafter instead. Let's drop the Gherkin aspect of it. All right, you'll see over on the right here where it says new agent, that'll change to Story Crafter. And now it's getting into refining those instructions. So it's asking next, let's refine what Story Crafter will do. Are there any particular types of documents or formats you want it to handle when converting requirements into Gherkin user stories? For example, should it work with PDFs, Word documents, emails, other formats? I do have some pre-saved instructions here that I'm going to paste in. And I'm not directly answering the question. Oftentimes, some of us may have experienced AI will suggest things along the way. Sometimes they're great ideas. Sometimes you just kind of blow right over it and go back to what your original mission was. So what I'm asking it is the story should be written as a role. I want to goal so that reason format, expressed in clear and non-technical language unless technical details are required, accompanied by acceptance criteria in given when then format. This is a huge one. Asking clarifying questions before drafting. I would definitely recommend if you guys ever dive into creating agents, this is always a really good instruction to add in there. It helps with the hallucination aspect where AI will try to fill in the gaps for you. Sometimes it's great, but sometimes it's going to hallucinate and assume some things that you're going to do more cleanup work rather than just telling it to ask me questions before you fill in that gap ahead of time. Suggest assumptions if the ambiguity is small, but clearly flag them. And then avoid making up business rules unless explicitly provided. So some of those instructions are specifically tailored around avoiding hallucination. Now, what it's doing in the background is it's configuring those instructions to be in the core instructions of the way this agent operates. If I switch over to the configure tab, that's where I can dive into some more complex or advanced settings. And we'll look at that here in just a moment. Your guidelines for Storycrafter have been added. Now, would you like to add any publicly accessible websites as knowledge sources for Storycrafter? This step is optional. You can provide URLs if you want the agent to reference specific materials. So this is often helpful if you specifically want to prioritize certain types of sources that are online. These aren't the kind of URLs that you put in there for like a SharePoint site or something you access internally to your organization. This would be, I want you to go out on the internet and pull from such and such website or such and such website. But for this case, we'll go ahead and just say no additional knowledge sources. Uh, whoops, sources right now. And then what it's going to do is just tell me that my agent's ready to go. Are there any more modifications you'd like to like? If you have additional requests or changes, let me know. I can update the agent further. If everything looks good, you can try the agent out in a separate chat dialog to the right. And you can always return here if you have further refinements or enhancements for your agent. So what's great here is you can test it out before you've officially created it or deployed it to where other users can leverage it. So let's go ahead and test it out. So my right pane here, this is the same as if I had deployed this agent and I am having a conversation with it. Just for the sake of the demo, I'm keeping things pretty simple. But what would be really helpful in the knowledge source realm, if I hop over to the configure tab, this is where I can go in there and manually adjust the name. I can give it a description. The description doesn't impact the way the agent functions. It just helps when somebody is looking at all the agents to choose from. It's that small little description as to like, okay, what does Storycrafter actually do? The instructions here are what AI actually, or this agent actually leverages to complete its job. But this knowledge realm is really where it can be powerful. I'm not going to dive too far into it right now, just because there's a lot of complexity and a lot of interesting things we can do here, but just for the sake of a demo, we'll keep it simple. This is where those URLs would be if I gave it any publicly accessible websites. But this is also where I could upload maybe a business requirement document or a training documentation on the specific product that we're working on. So then when it looks at crafting these stories, it can reference back to already existing requirement documentation and tell me, am I duplicating requirements? Are my requirements conflicting? What do I need to consider based on other requirements that I have created for this product? And then there's other things like the suggested prompt tiles that show up here that you can click right off the bat. Depending on what kind of agent you may have created, that could be very powerful. Sometimes they might not necessarily be useful right out of the gate. And then capabilities, this is kind of an ever expanding. I feel like over the course of the next couple of weeks, we'll probably see this even get a couple more. But code interpreter is really heavy from like a dev perspective. If you're pasting in snippets of code and you want it to review maybe a SQL statement or something like that. And then image generator just allows it to generate images. I'd say from an org perspective, you might want to touch base with your administrators just to make sure this is where you can get into credit usage to where it can cost a little more with each time that you prompt an AI agent. Now we're talking about like pennies, not like $1 an image or anything like that. But I think roughly like a prompt with just words backed is like a fraction of a penny. But at certain organizations where you may have 10,000 employees who are hitting this agent, it can be cost can rise. Okay, so for the sake of this demo, we're going to have it, I'm just going to give it what I want as a requirement. I want to be able to reset my password if I forget it. Very simple. I didn't give it a whole lot of extra parameters or anything like that because I want to see if it can help fill in the gaps with acceptance criteria, highlight those considerations that I may have not thought about. Can you turn this into a user story with clear acceptance criteria? Okay, so the feature is password reset as a user who has forgotten their password. I want to be able to reset it securely so that I can regain access to my account without needing support. Scenario, requesting a password reset. Given I am on the login page, when I click forgot password link, then I should be prompted to enter my registered email address. Next scenario, receiving a password reset email. Given I have entered a valid registered email, when I submit the password reset request, then I should receive the email resetting the password, confirmation of password reset, an invalid email address. Given I enter an email address that is not registered, when I submit the password reset request, then I should see an error message. So maybe something that I may have not thought about is putting in an email that doesn't exist. We might just jump straight to happy path, but it's calling out those potential unhappy path scenarios. So just like that, in a matter of a few minutes, we've got a powerful tool that you can hand off to BAs to really kind of accelerate their role and save some of that grunt work of typing out documentation. Now it's still important to have a human in the loop to review those for accuracy, but can save a lot of those kind of quick wins to save a little bit of time here and there that adds up over time. Alrighty, we'll hop back here into our slide deck. And now I want to cover a little bit about AI agents. So AI agents is where we take this a step further. We've taken a general chat bot, we customized it around a specific set of instructions. But what is an AI agent and how is it different from that? It's not only informational in a matter of advising you on the given prompt, but it'll actually take it a step further and execute a task or complete an action. Example use cases of this from a Agile team perspective will be integrations with Jira. It could read backlog items, read the context of those items as they come in, auto label them, auto categorize them, and even assign them out based on the rules and logic that you give it. Maybe it runs specifically in Teams in the background, and you invite this agent to your Teams meetings, and it is listening to that transcript, gathering the Scrum updates, and rather than just kind of taking notes, maybe it also takes a step further and sends it out to the team, or maybe it assigns tasks out in Microsoft To Do, or assigns things out in Jira. Those are all actions that it can take autonomously. Maybe it monitors a deployment pipeline and then creates release notes based on what was actually deployed in that pipeline. Again, saving some of that grunt work automatically. Now, there are some huge limitations here because it is kind of a new and kind of a brand new technology. There's still oversight that's very much needed. Governance, because we don't want kind of robots out in our organizations clicking buttons and moving things around. So that kind of thoughtful change management of how do we introduce these in a controlled manner without kind of just letting it off the leash to do whatever it wants to do. So going back to our analogy, again, general AI is kind of that colleague that we brainstorm with. A custom chatbot would be a specialized smart colleague that we brainstorm with. And an AI agent would be that colleague that we brainstorm with, but they also send an email or update Jira, or maybe they book a meeting for you. Now, I'm going to dive into ChatGPT here, which is a little bit different. A lot of everything I've shown has been in Copilot. I think it's always valuable to test certain things out in different tools just because they all have a different kind of superpower in a way. One of the really cool things that released somewhat recently with ChatGPT is something called agent mode. And the reason I want to show this is because it really highlights what we mean by an AI agent going out and taking action on its own. So to access agent mode, I click the plus button as if I'm going to add something, but I'm going to shift it over to agent mode. You can see it still classifies it as a new feature. I click agent mode, and then the prompt that I have here, again, it's a fairly simple prompt just because I want the demo to work. But what it's going to do is it's going to go to the Agile Indie website, and it's going to get me directions to their main office as if I was leaving from the eImagine home office. I gave the URL for the eImagine office and then the Agile Indie URL, and I've asked it to map those directions out in Google Maps. Again, it's probably something that I could go ahead and not have agent mode do this. I could probably just give this to regular ChatGPT. But watch what happens when agent mode is activated. You'll see that ChatGPT is setting up its own desktop. It's going to go to the extent of opening its own browser. And you'll see a cursor move around. And that is the actual agent navigating the web. You'll see it kind of have a stream of conscious as maybe it runs into a roadblocker and it's like, ooh, I don't think that URL worked. I'm going to try a different route. The URL I gave it for Agile Indie didn't work. So instead, it's going to go and Google Agile Indie, find the contact us page. What it's doing right now is gathering the address for the Agile Indie home office. Okay, I've got that. Now I'm going to go and look over for eImagine. Looks like it's added some additional information. Okay, now it's opening a new tab to find the eImagine home office web address. Now, depending on what kind of prompt I gave it, maybe I asked it to build out a cluster truck cart or something like that. I wanted to build, we gather what everybody ordered for lunch and we have it build that out for us. If it started going down a rabbit hole, like it added tomato to my burrito bowl, which I would never do, I can hop in here and I can quickly take over the browser. So there's always that ability for me to hop in there and take over the wheel, or I can just stop it altogether. Now you'll notice like it's not super quick. It's not fast because it's trying out a little bit of everything until it finds the address or test multiple avenues to kind of get there. So, we're in the early stages of this being extremely valuable to where it's going to go and replace our workflows with a fully agent driven functionality. But what I always like to say is this is the worst it's ever going to be right now, what we're seeing. It's only going to speed up. It's only going to get smarter. It's only going to get better from here. So now it has both addresses. It's hopped into Google Maps and it's starting to map out our trip from eImagine to Agile Indie. Now, one additional really cool thing about using agent mode in ChatGPT is say I told it to access a website that has a login page. Um, when it hits a login page, sometimes it'll attempt to put something in there. Or if it has like a skip, login as a guest option, it'll always look for that. But what's cool is it'll also say, hey, I can't log into this page. User, can you help me log in? And I can take over the browser, I can log in with my credentials, and then I can give control back to it. Little scary to think that, hey, I got this agent roaming around a website with my credentials. But with the proper kind of prompt, the proper kind of monitoring, you can start to experiment with, what does this look like? Where if we did maybe give an agent its own credentials to log into a website, or what are the guardrails we need to consider? So the reason I wanted to show this is really from an experimentation standpoint. There may not be a whole lot of immediate value that you can hop into right now with this kind of agent mode, but still, we're on the cusp of some really groundbreaking technology and functionality to leverage this. So again, I could have asked this prompt probably without using agent mode and gotten a very similar output. But I wanted to show you how it navigated the web to get there. And there's the directions on how to get from eImagine to Agile Indie. All righty. Now, one other kind of method for leveraging AI agents is through Copilot Studio, but specifically Copilot Studio in conjunction with Power Automate. When you're in Copilot Studio, there's basically it's a more robust version of customizing an agent, but you can add in the actions, the triggers, and then the actions that agent will take. Now, what I have here, just for the sake of privacy, is a snapshot of a flow that we created recently. Oops, I gotta grab this, move my little bar out of the way here. There we go. So what you're looking at here is an agent in combination with an agent flow. What this is we set up an automatic job that basically leverages an AI agent to gather the latest new features from Copilot, the latest tips and tricks, and the latest success stories in the industry that customers have experienced with Copilot. It does that at 9 a.m. every Monday. So the trigger here is a recurrence. When that trigger occurs, it triggers an agent to run a prompt to go out to Microsoft resources and gather the latest and newest features of Copilot. And then it holds on to that right there. Then it goes and runs another prompt to grab the latest tips, tricks, and how-tos from some other Copilot Learn resources. It holds on to that, the output of that prompt. Then it goes out to similar resources with Microsoft. It gathers the latest success stories that companies have experienced leveraging Copilot. It takes that output and it holds on to it. Then this flow kicks off a formatting of the email in order to make it in a clean, digestible format. Because oftentimes you'll see if you explore the Power Automate realm or agents, they work in very raw text format. It's your chat interface is a lot different from what backend AI is dealing with. It's not very pretty. So this job formats the email into a friendly HTML, a few bells and whistles with some emojis and the eImagine logo. And then it takes care of the action of sending out that email to anyone in our organization who has a Copilot license. So therefore, we're always kind of promoting and highlighting the latest and greatest things to explore with Copilot. There's a lot of places to gather that information, but having kind of a curated, dedicated communication is always very helpful. But it's also really helpful when you don't have to do it. You can have an agent take care of that for you. So what that actually looks like is this. We call it a weekly Copilot boost. It highlights features, very simple, nothing too complex, but it's gathering from verified sources that we told it to grab from. And we're going to take this a step further where you may notice smart recap in Teams. I'm sure you've probably been told or highlighted that feature since day one of Copilot. Hey, Copilot can summarize your meeting notes. And then the following day or tomorrow, we'll probably get that same exact highlighted feature because the prompt is just going back and grabbing new tips and tricks or new features without any reference to what it sent before. So what we can do is add in when it runs this prompt for new features, instead of hopping straight to formatting the email, we add another action here to go and populate a document or a repository, an Excel sheet, and log what you've sent previously. So that then when we get to the bottom or within these prompts, we can say, go find new features from these resources from Microsoft, but also check our repository of previous features that we've sent out. Make sure the new features you grab haven't already been sent. So it's doing a spot check along the way. So you're always getting new and relevant information. That's some of the ways that you can leverage AI. I mean, this is something that we have active right now. And again, always room for improvement. And when you're in Power Automate or you're in Copilot Studio, you can leverage Copilot along the way. So I think it's really cool, kind of like Inception, where you're using AI to build AI things. Um, and I'm going to go back in here and use Copilot to add in those additional actions. Now, there's a little bit of manual steps to tweak it to make it work properly. But I think if you hop in there and think of a quick win or a quick flow, you'll see that it's pretty magical on how quickly it can whip something up that works correctly. Alrighty, so we'll hop back into our slide deck here. And I just want to highlight, I know I've probably said some of this already, but why AI agents matter right now. When we think from an individual perspective and the interactions we have, agents can come in and reduce some of that grunt work. Not replace us, but free up time, free up energy to focus on some more meaningful collaboration. There's a lot of efficiency that can be gained, reducing that manual work by having it take actions. I could go out and look at the latest tips and tricks and craft an email and send it out to our organization, but it would take time. From a specifically an Agile perspective, when you have it hooked into reviewing your product backlog or helping to plan your work, you get faster refinement, you get a clearer backlog of things to work on, which overall equals a smoother delivery. So it has that domino effect, that pile-on effect of speeding things up and introducing value. responding to change and continuous improvement, these kind of go hand in hand with machine learning and its ability to continue to deepen its knowledge the more that you interact with it. So, whether that's analyzing change in requirements, if it's created requirements in the past and we save that and store that in its knowledge, it's going to be able to reference those requirements again to see how they've changed or quickly update estimates and roadmap based on additional changes to those requirements. And then it's also, you can take it a step further and ask it to reason. If you guys have heard of reasoning, to look for patterns or areas to uh, better, perform as a team. Sometimes they miss the mark terribly because AI is not human, but sometimes it's just raising an insight that maybe there is an action there to dig into further. So yeah, very, very valuable. A little bit more about where AI agents fit into an agile team. I think it's important to think about the autonomy levels on the way we have this run. The flow that I showed you would be in this realm of semi-autonomous agents. So you have assistive agents, which is where it will kind of prepare everything to do an action, but before it actually completes that action, it seeks approval from a user. Think about that in a matter of kind of like what we looked at ChatGPT. While it was surfing around, I could have interjected at any moment and pulled that over. Or if it ran into a login page or a spot that it got stuck, it would reach out to me and ask for me to get it unstuck. Semi-autonomous agents run those workflows with very light oversight, but still I can have it send me like our Copilot Boost email. I can have that basically send me an approval before it sends that, or maybe it sends it to me 20 minutes beforehand. Those areas where I can have those checks and balances along the way. Or I can completely hands off and forget about it and just have that run wild and run completely autonomously. I do think that these situations of completely autonomous agents are still rare. It's more experimental right now, and I would encourage experimenting to find out where um, you can have autonomy in our workflows. Um, but building on that, tools and integrations um, matter massively in this realm. Using Copilot, there's all kinds of integrations and ways that it can connect with all the different kind of SharePoint or Microsoft tools, specifically in SharePoint or Teams. But it can also, you can connect it with other external systems like Jira, like GitHub, a lot of Slack. There's all kinds of tools within the Copilot Studio and within Power Automate. So where could AI agents actually support in Agile teams right now? Ceremony support. We talked about when you create an agent, you can add it to a meeting so it can actually listen into those transcripts or listen to those conversations and then take action. Rather than you taking the output from AI, it can go ahead and send that output, or it can go ahead and assign those to-dos. Active backlog refinement, testing, documentation. Team support is a huge one. Oftentimes, listening in the front lines, seeing how people are feeling. It can also listen for that sentiment via communications. Is there a concern with the team on this topic, or is there an area to strengthen the team in this area? It really bringing to light some things that can fall through the cracks if you're not, keeping ears to the ground. And the last thing here, I would just say, why now? Why would be the time to hop on this wagon? As we've seen, even since the last time we spoke, the maturity and speed of AI innovation is only increasing. There's a lot of usable use cases within the business right now, even if it's just small wins. Small wins stack up. That 10 minutes that you can save on a daily basis. It's still valuable time to free you up to do something else. And we're only seeing more and more integrations and more tools leverage AI. So staying up to speed with those and understanding where you can leverage AI and plug it in is only going to prepare you for when that next integration or that next leak comes out. As I'm sure we've all experienced, there's a lot of pressure on delivery, a lot of pressure on organizations and businesses as a whole, just to reduce overhead or do more with less. And then I'd say how do you get there in a matter of embracing AI and bringing it into your organization? And I think experimentation is key. Don't get hung up on thinking of the perfect use case before you start diving in and playing around with it. This is really one of the best ways to learn, and those use cases will come to light when you come across, an interesting experiment that results in, hey, I'm going to share this with somebody else. And then you're brainstorming an idea. And that's the other call out I wanted to say is share your findings with your teams. Ideas spark other ideas, and then someone's going to get a hold of that idea and they're going to invest in it. And the next thing you know, you're going to have a valid use case that you're embracing as an organization. So champion AI and promote the use of AI and bring others along with you. So with that, that is the end of the AI agents and custom chatbot conversation. But I do want to dive into something pretty interesting. I'm sure some people have heard of this topic before. Vibe coding. Now, this is something that carries a little bit of a interesting weight to it. I'd say stigma. But I think there is a place where vibe coding does fit in. So what is vibe coding? It's using AI coding assistants like GitHub Copilot or ChatGPT or Cursor or Claude. There's all kinds of tools. Really, you can use regular Copilot as well. And it's using it in kind of a free flow experimental way where you're not following necessarily a strict set standard plan for development. You're really just vibing with it on what you want it to do. And you describe in a natural language. So think of it like describing your idea in natural language. I want a script that makes a simple to-do list app. AI will draft that code in whatever kind of language that you gave it. Maybe it's basic HTML. It generates something that you can run right away. And then you go back to that same conversation and say, actually, can you make this color different? Can you add a button here that does this? And there's many different ways that you can leverage something like Copilot or something like vibe coding, not from coding a production product that you sell out or anything like that, but maybe it's a prototype. Maybe it's a mock-up of an idea of a product that you would create. Maybe it's a disposable tool that you really need something that can do XYZ, but you don't want to purchase a product or you just need it for this one scenario. So I want to show that to you. So let's pretend we have the problem to solve. We want to forecast or plan our next few sprints. Now, what we do have, and I think of it as kind of like the ingredients that you put into this prompt or conversation I have with Copilot. In this case, we're talking ChatGPT. But let's say I have a team roster. I have roles, people, allocation. Maybe I have their focus areas or their skill sets. And then I have a prioritized backlog. Maybe some things with, a rough swag or size estimate, the severity, maybe the priority of it. And then I also have kind of the general logic or the guidelines behind how our team operates. What's the structure of our sprint? How much do we allocate people to those sprints? What's our typical technical overhead that we count into play? And then what's our overall team operations or our playbook behind that? So what we've created here is something that I call a sprinter tool. I will go ahead and open it up here. This is a basic HTML tool created 100% by AI, all with me vibing over what the goal was. I gave it, hey, I want to give you a team roster. I want to give you a backlog. Here's some of the way our team operates. I want a tool where I can upload that roster. I can upload that backlog. I can tell you how many sprints I want and how long I want those sprints to be. And I want you to auto schedule that out based on the team roster and their skill sets and their role type. I want you to plan that out for me. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what this tool created. I have a sample roster. It's all DC superheroes, some villains in there. So we got Batman, Superman, Robin, the Joker's in there. Let's go ahead and add them in. And then a sample backlog. This is all just very generic AI generated backlog items. We have things like the issue ID, the title of the ticket. You can see that this may look like some Jira terminology. The type of ticket it is, the sprint it's associated with, or kind of like the bucket that it falls into. There's current status, priority, severity, and original estimate. Okay, so now it has the team roster and it has the Jira backlog. This is part of the vibing. When I first added these in, it wasn't understanding which columns go to which kind of variable type within the tool. So I suggested, hey, can you add a field mapping tool to where I can tell you what column equals what kind of variable in your tool? And it added this expandable section. So I can map, okay, name goes to name, role goes to role. It just so happened to get it right after I added this field mapping tool in here. But just goes to show you how you can quickly iterate and refine and add to it. Now down here, ignore the view mode. That's a concept here, but let's say we wanted to plan out 3 sprints, and I want those sprints to be 2 weeks long. It's going to categorize based on, are we working on enhancement level work? Are these hot fix or defects from production? Are they M&O items, just general items from backlog, or are they data related items? I'm going to go ahead and process and plan. Now what it's done is, based on the role type, it's assigned out each of those items from the backlog based on the priority and severity, and also based on the capacity that that person would have for that sprint. So you'll see 2 weeks, you think, oh, there's 40 hours in a week, that'd be 80 hours of capacity. Well, part of our logic is that we consider 25% technical overhead or 25% for administrative work. So it's only going to count for 60 hours of capacity. And then I also gave it logic to, we don't like to context switch. If somebody's working on data or they're working on enhancements, we don't want them to work on a little bit of enhancements here, a little bit of data here. So it's only prioritizing one type of backlog item for each person. Then I said, well, if I click on this, it's nice to see each item. I'd really like to be able to get a way to export that as a table. So it developed this little open tools tray, and I can go to assignments table, and I can see every single item and where it's been assigned to. I can go up and I can filter down to maybe just Batman for sprint 2. Now I'm looking at only the items that Batman has within sprint 2. I can also say, now we had a lot more items in the backlog than just 3 2-week sprints worth. Can I see what was not included or what was deferred back to the backlog? Well, if I scroll down a little further, here's our unassigned backlog where things are still sitting because we just didn't have the capacity to complete it in 3 sprints. It even added little things in here, like a little self-test to make sure it's parsing out Excel sheets. And then I just started to play around with it just to see, like, how easy can I change some major UI things? Can we add a dark mode? So I added a little toggle here for light and dark mode. And then to really push the efforts of okay, what can it really do? I said, this is totally unnecessary and not valuable, but can you create confetti and it's party time graphic to show up? So it just was able to do that. Now, the cool part about all of this is that this is probably about 3 hours worth of time put into this tool, all vibe coded with AI. This is a tool that would take probably, a few weeks for somebody to develop from scratch, with hands on the keyboard developing. And maybe it's a tool that we'd only use a few times, not something that we roll out to, every single, project team, or it's very, very specific to our project. So where I think vibe coding would fit in are those almost kind of disposable tools where you really just need to stand up an idea or stand up a tool for a specific scenario right now, but I don't need it to be this fully validated, ready to go, ready to sell kind of product or anything like that. And that's it. So we will open up for Q&A. I know that was a lot of information. We'll let the questions fly if there are any.
Hold on, I'll stop recording. Hold on.